Well, welcome everyone. My name is Erik Wolf, and I serve as the Executive Director of the World Food Travel Association based in Portland, Oregon. And I would like to welcome you to our second online food travel summit. Our first online summit took place in 2015, and this is our second, and we're delighted that we have set a record. We've exceeded our previous attendance at the online summit by almost twice. And this is the third largest event that our association has ever held. So we're delighted to welcome all of you to the online summit today. You noticed in the waiting room that we put some announcements up there. So I won't go over all of that housekeeping information right now, but I did want to draw your attention to a couple things. First of all, this session coming up in just a moment, session 1 is oversold. So if there are any all access pass holders who could not get in, we will make a recording available just to them. Session 1, peering into the food tourism future. As I said, my name is Erik Wolf, and I serve as the Executive Director of the World Food Travel Association. And most of you know who I am, so I'm not going to bore you with my bio. For all of the sessions for the online summit, you can read detailed speaker biographies as well as session descriptions on the online summit webpage. So before we get started, I would like to just make sure that we're all on the same page here. I always like to talk about what food tourism is and make sure that we all have a common understanding of it. So in the early days, back in 2003, we published a definition that food tourism is the pursuit and enjoyment of unique and memorable food and drink experiences both far and near. And that definition has served us really well over the past several years. Now, in 2016, we added a little bit to that a definition. And now we look at culinary activity and motivation. So travelers who have participated in a unique or memorable food or drink experience other than dining out while traveling, and for whom food and drink activities are a prime motivator in choosing a destination. Now, you may be interested to know that 93% of people we surveyed said that they had participated in a unique or memorable food or drink experience other than dining out. And also, according to our definition, that it was about 47% of all the travelers we surveyed were considered then culinary travelers. So that is a tremendous number and increase since the previous research that was done in 2013. So just to make sure we all understand what we mean by food tourism and food travelers. And you can also go to this link on the screen, whatisfoodtourism.org, and that will tell you more about food tourism. Now, I think the first thing to keep in mind about what's taking place in the food tourism industry and what's coming around the corner is really the evolution of dining. And this is changing in so many important ways. So I really wanted to spend some time on this and share with you our thoughts on what's happening. First of all, one of the things that we're seeing in the industry is costs are rising exponentially. And this, of course, can affect the food traveler experience. But costs are rising for labor, manual labor, the rent for brick and mortar businesses, business taxes or tax rates are increasing as well. And of course, the cost of the ingredients, the raw products that go into the food that the restaurants make. You're also seeing a shortage of labor in a lot of countries, Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, and other places, Australia, where they just simply cannot find enough people to work in food service positions. And this means that the people that are working in those positions can command higher salaries. So that means they need to charge more for the meals they create. You'll also see in food service that a lot of independents are going out of business, but at the same time they're going out of business, there are other ones coming online. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a wash. It's just something to pay attention to. But we're also seeing that even some chain restaurants are closing some locations. And the locations they seem to be closing are the ones that tend to be unprofitable for them. But in 20 years ago, you would see chain restaurants popping up all over the place, and no one gave a second thought about where they were opening or anything like that. And now it's very interesting to see that in some situations, chains are actually closing their specific outlets. And I've seen this with 5 or 6 different large chains, at least here in the United States, and I know it's happening in the United Kingdom as well. Now, we're also seeing increased competition when it comes to food service. And by food service, I'm meaning the restaurants that we all love and adore when we travel. The first thing that we're seeing competition-wise is that grocery stores are cashing in on the food service phenomena. You may have noticed when you go into a grocery store now that oftentimes they will be offering prepared meals. All you need to do is take it back and heat and eat. And there's, of course, the large rise of food trucks around the world as well. Now, if you're saying, well, not all travelers have ovens or microwaves back in their lodging, so that doesn't really affect. Well, actually, it is affecting quite significantly. If you look at what Airbnb has done with lodging, and you look what grocery stores are doing with food service, all of a sudden, hotels and restaurants are seriously threatened. And this really puts a wrench in the idea of the food tourism industry and traveling for these wonderful, unique experiences. Now, I'm not saying restaurants are going to go out of business anytime soon, but this is seriously affecting what's happening in the food service industry. We're also seeing increased use of technology in food service. And this is something that you may have kind of quietly noticed creeping into restaurants, but it's becoming increasingly obvious. What we're seeing in some places is even restaurants that are staffed by robots. And if you don't believe me, you can go to robotrestaurant.in for India, and you can see their pictures and videos of the robots going around the restaurant delivering food, just like you'll see on the screen here. It's really kind of amazing to see this happening. So you're seeing that servers are being replaced, and even menus are being replaced, in a lot of cases being offered now on tablets, such as you see here. I have seen this in airports as well, where you have a restaurant and there's maybe 40 or 50 tables, and there's only 1 or 2 servers, and they're really just food runners. So what this means then is that there's no interaction with a human, or very little interaction with the human. There's no chance to ask the server where they're from, what their favorite restaurants are, or anything like that. And all of a sudden, then servers are simply becoming food deliverers. And that's a shame. Obviously, this is not happening everywhere in the world, but it is a trend that is coming, and it is coming in some places more quickly than others. You're also seeing robots in the kitchen. And there is an example, myblended, BLENDID.com. And it's an example of robot technology that's working its way into the kitchen. So we are a little concerned that this is affecting the traveler experience, or it has the potential to significantly. One of the main reasons why travelers eat out for the experience includes the meeting the locals, such as the waitstaff and the owner. And it may be more efficient to offer people to order by tablet, but it is a way to save on labor costs, but it reduces the visitor's experience significantly. We're also seeing increased innovation. So it's not all doom and gloom. Businesses, people who are starting up new restaurants or new food and beverage manufacturers are looking for ways to still operate while they contain their costs. And there are food incubators around the world that can provide low-cost or no-cost office space or kitchen space for them to work in. Here we see a picture of Wapping Wharf in Bristol, England. And this is a fascinating development. in this particular location, businesses are opening in shipping containers. So if you look carefully, you'll actually see that these are shipping containers stacked right next to each other. And it's very clever. They have put them side by side. They've put roofing area seating on the top as well, seating out in front. So it's quite lovely, actually. And you wouldn't really necessarily notice that you're operating out of a shipping container, but it's a great way to recycle and reuse. If you're interested in exploring more about this development, you can go to wappingwharf.co.uk. And Wapping is spelled Wapping, Wharf, WHARF.co.uk. So you see the use of non-traditional facilities like this, and then you're also seeing the rise of food trucks and even people selling right on the street. You'll see this a lot in especially visitor destinations or in cruise ship ports as well, or in some of the markets that you'll see out and about. So people are innovative and they are doing what they can to try and run their businesses and to sell. Now let's look at the product experience. Now, Airbnb has been a disruptor in lodging, and we all know what Airbnb has done for the lodging industry around the world. Some people love it, some people don't, but the fact remains that it is something that we need to pay attention to. And what you'll see on Airbnb's website is that they're also selling experiences when it comes to food and beverage. And they are not selling products necessarily, they're selling experiences. So rather than just selling a tour, they're selling you the passion and the romance that goes around that as well. And let me go to the next slide here, and you can see a little bit more in detail what I mean. So you can see they're with compelling photography. Most of these have extremely high ratings. This is enticing, it's exciting, it's nice to see this. But again, they're selling the experiences. So you can actually go out and taste the coffee. You can learn how to cook. You can make chocolate. You can go on a wine venture and do tasting. So this is an important thing to keep in mind. And we always say in food tourism that it's about the experience, that businesses should be selling a memory and not a meal. It's one thing for someone just to go into a restaurant and be fed, and it's another thing for someone to go on a tour or a tasting or something like that and have an actual experience. So we like to see things like this where it's making this kind of information available to more travelers. I'm also happy to see that many of the prices of these experiences have come down. When Airbnb first launched this, some of their experiences were exceedingly expensive. I remember seeing a tour of the London Borough Market with a former chef, and it was a tour of the market, and you went shopping, and then you went back to the chef's place and made a meal, and it was the equivalent of about $520 to do that. And I was a bit amazed. I wondered how many takers they had, but in any case, obviously at $19, $22, $50, $14 per person, a lot more people can take advantage of that. Now let's talk a little bit about destinations as the product. And destinations are one of the most exciting things in food tourism. People will travel to a destination because of the reputation of food or drink. And here we're seeing the rise of over-tourism. So this is perhaps one of the best examples is Barcelona, Spain, which whenever anyone talks about over-tourism, Barcelona usually tops the list. Other cities that are experiencing this kind of stress are Amsterdam, Venice, Italy, San Francisco, Hong Kong as well, just teeming with people. And that really affects the visitor experience. Now, we do have Danny Adler from Adler and Marlow, tour operator in Barcelona, who will be speaking about over-tourism and how it has caused him to need to change his itineraries. However, it remains that this is a serious issue. And when I was preparing with Danny for his talk, we were talking about the experience in Barcelona, and he was saying that visitors will get off the cruise ship and they'll be taken for paella to some nondescript touristy type place. He said that paella is not even native to that part of Spain, and the kind of experience they're getting is very watered down anyway. So they go back to the ship and they think that they've had authentic paella, and that's just not the case. Also, what happens when a business is really popular, people will crowd it and no one else wants to go there anymore. We have an ice cream store in Portland, Oregon called Salt and Straw, and they have maybe 4 or 5 locations around town. And there is always a line out the door and often around the block. And it amazes me that people will wait in line, but this is the phenomenon. And so it's an example of perhaps over queuing or over waiting in line. Portland has become very popular for food, as you well know, but waiting for in line for brunch for 2 hours or waiting for ice cream for an hour, these are the kinds of experiences when there are too many travelers. And the opportunity here is for adjacent destinations to benefit, or businesses that are a little less known to benefit. Just on the street corner of one of our more popular brunch destinations in Portland called Screen Door, on the corner of the street, there is an A board, which is one of those boards that sits on the street, and it is directing diners to another brunch location just a block away. So it's very clever, and I'm sure that the owners of Screen Door don't appreciate that. But it is a way to break up the number of people who want to experience that particular business. And the same with destinations. Consider a large festival where a city might have 100,000 people descending on it over the course of a week. That strains infrastructure. But nearby cities can benefit if they market and promote smartly. So like I was saying, when a city like Barcelona or Amsterdam or sometimes London is over-touristed, the cities or the destinations that benefit are the secondary and tertiary destinations. Places like, so instead of London, people can head over to Bristol or up to Leeds or over to Newcastle or over to Cardiff. These destinations have the potential to benefit when London is too busy. And I think what is also happening, there's always the people who want to go somewhere that they've never been. So I've never been to Tuscany. I want to go to Tuscany. I'm going to go there. And then you'll have traffic jams in the middle of the Italian countryside. And it's really it's funny and sad to see at the same time that Tuscany is so popular, and you don't expect a traffic jam in the middle of the Italian countryside. Nevertheless, it happens. And it happens in Oregon's wine country, and it happens in Napa Sonoma as well. But again, the rising stars, these smaller destinations can really shine. And also what happens with the larger destinations, often the food and drink experience is sidelined. It's not necessarily put on a pedestal. It's one of the many things that destination can promote. They have sports, they have cultural things like concerts and theater and plays and so on. They have shopping, they have visiting friends and relatives. So there's so many things that people can do in a large destination that the tourism office really has to be everything to everyone. And in the smaller destination, they have the opportunity to really shine and accentuate what they do well. And if that happens to be food or drink, then that's how they can benefit. Another thing that we are seeing as a truly significant trend is the increase of food and beverage packaging waste. And this is something that really has started to concern us. It has also started to concern a number of businesses and destinations around the world, and even organizations. Sky TV in the UK has an ocean rescue program, and if you're not familiar with it, it's really a fantastic undertaking. And I would recommend all you need to do is just Google Sky Ocean Rescue, and you can see the details of that particular program. But back to the issue at hand here. In the lower left corner, you will see garbage piled up on the streets of New York, and that pile is about 6 feet high, or about 1.8 meters high, literally. And this isn't just a picture that someone put together and doctored up. I have seen this myself on the streets of New York City, garbage piled as high as I am tall, and it is shocking. You will see garbage bins like the one in the upper left here, which are overflowing with trash. And the last time I was in New York, I paid careful attention to what I was seeing, and most of the trash in these garbage bins had to do with food and beverage packaging. I saw all kinds of things, like you'll see here, the takeaway containers, drink containers, uneaten food, just considerable amounts of waste. So this is definitely something that needs attention. And there are solutions out there that we can start implementing already. One of the simplest things that we can introduce is paper straws to replace the plastic straws. I was in Belize a year or two ago, and I went to a restaurant, and I was with a colleague who was also very environmentally sensitive. And we told the server that we did not want any straws in our drinks. And lo and behold, the drinks came out, and not one but 2 straws in each drink. So that was a total of 4 plastic straws that would just go into the waste bin after the meal. And we tried to kind of politely let the server know that we didn't want the plastic straws after all. And she didn't really seem to understand why we didn't want the straws. So that was interesting to see her reaction to that. But you may have heard about the Strawless in Seattle campaign. That is a campaign to eradicate plastic straws from the city there. A lot of destinations around the world are starting to really take into consideration this phenomena. In the top center here, you will see some green takeaway containers. There's 4 or 5 containers stacked on top of each other. This is called GoBox, and it was something that was started here in Portland. GoBox PDX is the website address if you'd like to learn more. But the idea is that people in the downtown core would buy a token, and the token would let them get a fresh takeaway container every time they went to one of our food carts in town. And then there are receptacles around the city where you can deposit your used takeaway container. And then those containers are taken back to a central kitchen where they are washed and sanitized and then reused. So that is great to see, but it's small steps, and we need to work together. And I would encourage anyone who is in a food service business to seriously consider the impact of the food and beverage waste. I went to another food cart, and that was recommended. I ordered Thai takeaway, and by the time I got back to where I was and I unpacked my Thai meal, which was very tasty, but I was alarmed at the volume of waste that I was given. There was a plastic bag. There was the plastic clamshell. There was a wrapper containing plastic cutlery, but I was also given, there were napkins or serviettes in that, and napkins and serviettes also on the side. There was rice in a little rice container, which had plasticized paper, so that can't be recycled. There was a Thai iced tea, which had a plastic container, a plastic lid, and a plastic straw. And I looked at this volume of waste in front of me, and I said, the business is just trying to make money and survive. And here I am as the consumer trying to enjoy my meal, but at the same time, I'm causing this much waste. So it's a deep question. There's not an easy answer, but it's something that we all need to work towards. I do know that I do take with me a plastic spork It's a spoon and a fork that is used normally for camping, and I will take this with me when I'm traveling, and whenever I can, I will use that. Also the same with the portable coffee cups. Now, one of the solutions that people can utilize is bamboo. Bamboo is very sustainable, it grows quickly, and if you are smart, you can actually find bamboo cutlery that is the same price as plastic. And if you're nodding your head right now and saying, no, that's just not true, well, I have sourced resources online where this costs either the same or just about the same as plastic. So now there's no reason not to embrace this. And in terms of other things, there's things like corn plastic, which is made from corn. It's not really plastic, but it looks and acts like plastic, and some businesses have been using that. So it's a big issue, and the reason I'm spending so much time on this is because this is probably one of the most significant issues to affect our industry currently. And I would certainly hope that wherever you are, you're doing what you can to help to minimize the impact of this on your environment locally. And again, do have a look at the Sky Ocean Rescue website, and also just Google Strawless in Seattle, and that will tell you a little bit more about that campaign as well. All right, now let's talk about the customer and how things are changing for the customer. Now, you probably are well aware that food delivery is a thing now. And many of us have heard of Uber Eats, but there's other solutions as well. Postmates, Deliveroo, Foodpanda, Just Eat. These are just a few of the hundreds of food delivery applications. And I'm going to tell you a little story. I was coming back from London, I guess this was 2 years ago, and I had to overnight in Chicago to get my connecting flight back to Portland. And it was, because of the flights, it was just easiest to get an airport hotel. So that's what I did. So there I was, stuck outside of Chicago City, near O'Hare Airport, in the winter, dark, cold, just, lots of industry around me. I wasn't really feeling motivated to go out and find a place to eat. And I didn't know the area. I didn't know what businesses were around me. I didn't know what food was good. I can't remember what online resource I used to try and find somewhere to eat. I hope I didn't use Yelp, but in any case, I did find somewhere. And Italian is a thing in Chicago, and Chicago is known for its great Italian food. And so I wanted to take the opportunity and have an Italian meal. So I ordered some food, and it was brought to me, and it came, you look at the pictures on the website, and it looks very tasty, and I wanted chicken parmesan, and I was very excited. And it came in an aluminum foil container with one of those paper lids lined with an aluminum lining, and the hunk of French bread was just thrown into the bag, and there was the plastic cutlery, and it was just, I can't tell you how unappetizing it was. It was just really, I didn't want to eat it. And I realized what had happened was I didn't have the experience. I was getting a meal, but this was not creating a memory. I should have gone to that restaurant where I could have experienced the servers and maybe the owner and gotten into the atmosphere and ambiance. But in any case, this is an example of when I was using food delivery. So what happened was I was completely distanced from the experience. I was just delivered a meal. I was delivered food. People are dining out more than ever. And according to a recent Open Table report, 73% of respondents will eat out at a full-service restaurant at least weekly. But in that same report, a large percentage of diners are ordering food for delivery, up to 32% of respondents. So that's tremendous. Now, the implications for travelers are that while we may eat out for every meal while traveling, increasingly, we may instead opt to have food delivered to our hotel or other lodging. And it's one of those double-edged swords. It's happening. So restaurants and other food service providers need to take this into consideration. And another situation when delivery would be used would be in a situation where the travelers don't know the local language. So imagine I went to China and I'm staying in a hotel in Shanghai, and there is a flyer on the desk for food delivery. And there are pictures that I can look at and see what looks good to me. And I can pretty much tell what's shrimp and what's chicken and what's beef. And I can find something and I can order it all online or on my phone, and it just comes to me, and there we go. So a lot of times in many Asian countries, you will see the food that's on offer photographed and put in front of the restaurant so people can see what it looks like before they come in. But back to being somewhere where you don't speak the language. If I went to Russia, for example, China, Korea, I have no idea what things are. I don't know the characters. I can't read it. I have no clue. So in situations like this, I'm probably going to do some kind of a delivery thing, unless I'm talking to a local. But people don't always have local contacts that they can rely on. And language can be a big barrier. So with food delivery, no communication is necessary. Now, another thing that we're seeing is the rise of rideshare. And you'll see a few companies on the screen here. Many of them I'm sure you probably know. Ride-sharing services are continuing to expand, and they are playing major roles in food and beverage tourism. Not only do food travelers need help finding and getting to the local businesses like restaurants or wineries or breweries, but rideshare services are also playing an increasingly important role in responsible alcohol consumption. So this is probably a side benefit, something that we didn't anticipate, but it's great to see. And you've heard many stories about people arriving in a new city, talking to the taxi driver on the way into the city from the airport. The cab driver will share their favorite hangouts, their favorite restaurants, or maybe a great place to brunch. Then they take another cab later and they get another story from another driver. And so that's great because that's interactivity. That is the driver sharing their own preferences. When people come to Portland to visit for whatever reason, I have a pre-printed guide that I send them in advance so they have an idea of where they can go. It's kind of like my insider's cheat sheet to Portland. One of the challenges, though, is that apart from Uber, there are probably hundreds of these rideshare services around the world, and many that people have not even heard of. So in France, for example, Uber doesn't exist. So you have Le Cab. You also have a lot of challenging situations with Uber in the UK, where Uber is being kicked out of cities or being challenged, or there was a situation in London where Uber was possibly going to be banned from London, which that would be a really big deal. But there are other services that are nationally known. So in the United States, for example, we have Lyft. Lyft is an alternative to Uber. So if someone doesn't feel like taking Uber, they can take Lyft. However, you can't take Lyft outside the United States. So when I was in London last year and I was with some people and I wanted to get somewhere fast and not have to take the tube, I was going to take an Uber. Now, of course, Uber made it exceedingly difficult to actually sign up. And as it turns out, it was taking me so much time to sign up for Uber and get started that I actually just ended up going to the tube anyway. So well done, Uber, for that fantastic experience. Nevertheless, the other thing is that people now can go somewhere. They can go to a bar or a winery and try a few drinks, try different ones, and not worry about having to drive home or not getting home safely. So this is really helping to change the food and beverage tourism industry. Now, one thing that's is evolving in this is driverless cars. And you probably have heard that Google and Uber have been testing their driverless car technology. It's not quite there yet. There is something in the news a couple months ago about an Uber car that ran over a pedestrian in Arizona, and the pedestrian died. So that was not very good. They're also testing driverless cars in Boston. And this is going to happen. and sooner than later. And imagine you arrive at a destination, you get into your driverless car at the airport, the car takes you to your lodging, so you've spoken to no one. You get to the hotel where maybe you're checking in at a kiosk, so you're talking to no one. You get to your room and you use your phone as your key, and you can get into your room. You've talked to no one since you've arrived. And I think one of the beauties of food tourism is that interactivity. It's getting to know the locals. And we food travelers, we're explorers. We like to talk to locals. Even if we don't speak the language, we will want to try. And I think this, going back to technology, it is presenting a kind of a threat to the food traveler experience, something that we definitely need to pay attention to. Now, I'd also like to talk, when we're talking about customers, I'd like to talk about your new customers. And this data, well, this was a finding that came out of our 2016 Food Travel Monitor. We knew that food travelers were skewing younger ever since we started doing our research back in 2007 and 2010 and 2013. Every time we did this research, it was confirmed that food travelers were skewing younger. And so we said, okay, well, we're keeping our eye on this. Well, in 2016, for the first time, we saw that the majority of food-loving travelers were of the millennial generation. That was the first time that had happened, and that was a significant development. And we really paid a lot of attention to that. We went back and looked at the data and analyzed it even further. So not only are your new customers millennials, which you'll see on the left there, but they're going to be increasingly Generation Z, which you're seeing on the right. And the Generation Z people are the ones who are, probably not more than maybe 20, 21 years old right now, but they are your future customers as well. So as older generations retire, move away, die, sorry to say, but it's happening. Obviously, it happens as we get older. These are your new customers. And it means that you need to make sure that you are developing products that are appealing to a younger generation, but also that you're promoting your products in channels where these younger generations like to receive information. So one of the things that you may have heard is that younger consumers don't like Facebook anymore. They look at it like it's something for their older parents to do. And they're using Snapchat and Kik and some other kinds of platforms that they like to talk on. So if you want to increase your customer base, that means that you have to be on those platforms as well. And I can tell you from experience, it is simply easier to work with someone of that age group and ask them to do it for you than to try and figure it out yourself. If you are of a slightly older generation like me, I'm a Gen Xer, and it is definitely easier for me to ask my millennial and even Gen Z friends for their assistance in trying to reach those target markets. Now, we will be hearing more about reaching millennials in a talk being given by Kuvi Axe and Alexander Palmerton tomorrow morning. I would be remiss if I did not talk about special diets. And this is something that many of us have friends who are gluten intolerant or perhaps vegetarian or maybe eating kosher or halal, or there's many different reasons why someone would have a special diet. And this is increasingly a thing, but diets don't get turned off when we go on holiday. We still, if we have celiac disease, that doesn't mean that we're gonna just eat nothing, we're gonna avoid wheat at home and then go on holiday and eat wheat. It means that we go on holiday and we still can't eat wheat. Or if we're a vegetarian, we're not going to break that and all of a sudden eat meat on holiday. So we need to take into consideration these particular kinds of dietary needs and preferences and plan for them, especially in tourist destinations. Now, I've noticed that in places not in the United States, not in much of Europe, but elsewhere, the notion of special dietary menus or needs or addressing them doesn't always exist. And that can be a challenge, especially what if you have a peanut allergy? you absolutely do not want to have anything with peanut oil in it. You could die. And something that needs to be taken into consideration. Now, one thing that food service can do is to use menu messaging. Menu messaging is the idea of taking a menu and using it as a tool to tell a story. So you can either talk about the history of the business, or you can talk about the ingredients, where they're sourced from, or you can give dietary information like this. And it is something that we wholeheartedly recommend. There's no reason why a business could not put additional dietary information on the menu. In some destinations, you'll see, like I think New York City was talking about requiring things like calories and fat content in the main courses in restaurants. That, I think, is maybe going a little bit too far in the regulatory direction. But there's nothing that would prevent a restaurant from saying this dish contains gluten, wheat, soy, and or tree nuts, just for example. All right, so that is it for the content, and we have maybe about 5 minutes, and I would just like to have a look here at the chat window and see if any questions have come in. We are doing questions by chat, so I'm just looking here and see if we have any questions. All right, Sarah shares, we have one restaurant partner where we get milkshakes, and instead of getting plastic to-go cups and plastic straws, we bought them a set of glass milkshake mugs and metal straws. They were happy to store and wash those and use them for every tour we bring in. We also just ask all our other partners not to provide straws in our drinks when we're at a sit-down stop. No one has ever missed them. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. That's absolutely true. I think no one does miss a plastic straw, and metal straws are another great alternative. I mentioned paper straws earlier, but metal straws certainly. Here's a question. What if food tour operators gave participants recyclable utensils and containers to use during the experience and to keep for future use? They could also be branded so customers remember and share where they got them. That's a great idea, a recyclable food container that you can take with you, and it has the name of your company on it. Let's see here. Oh, someone is watching and taking an Uber to a restaurant. All right. Thank you from Poland. Here's someone sharing an example. When I was in Asia, I took a food tour that gave us fabric shopping bags upon arrival. Inside the bag were lovely bamboo chopsticks, bento box, and a brochure explaining the importance of reducing packaging waste. I used the box and chopsticks for years in all my travels. Great example. Thank you, Linda, for sharing. Let's see. I will say that there are studies that show people enjoy food more when they use silverware as opposed to plastic cutlery. So you'd want to make sure they're good quality. Absolutely. And I think that's a really important point, Sarah. When that meal came to me at my Chicago airport hotel, I was given plastic utensils. And there's just something, plastic is cheap. It just doesn't feel good in your hand. I had a hard time cutting the chicken parmigiana. It just, plastic knives and a plastic fork just don't cut it, literally. And I think that is probably why the experience was dumbed down for me. If I had had metal cutlery, at least I could have enjoyed my meal. I could have gotten it into my mouth a little bit better. So thank you, Sarah. So are there any other questions that anyone would like to ask? We have 1 or 2 more minutes. Well, it doesn't look like there's any more questions, so I will go ahead and stop the sharing right now. And I'd like to thank all of you for attending this first session, Peering into the Food Tourism Future, here at the Online Food Travel Summit. We will start our session 2 in just about 10 minutes time. Thank you everyone for attending, and we look forward to seeing you at another one of our sessions here during the summit. Have a good day.